She looked at me like she was remembering something that hadn't happened yet. That's the only way I can describe it, that mix of recognition and restraint, as if she already knew what I was about to feel for her, and was deciding whether to let it happen. The room wasn't much. Just a small cafe tucked behind the university library, half empty, the kind of place where time slowed down because no one was in a hurry. The hum of the espresso machine, the faint scent of old books, rain tapping against the window, everything blurred until there was only her. Lena. Her name felt too light for how she carried herself, steady, deliberate, a kind of calm that made other people lower their voices when she passed. I knew her from before, technically. She'd once lectured a creative writing class I never finished. I told myself I came here for the coffee. That was a lie I didn't even try to believe. She sat across from me, one hand resting near her cup. Her nails were short, unpainted. A silver ring on her index finger caught the light every time she moved. I kept catching myself watching her hands, the way they spoke more than her mouth ever did. "You still write?" she asked, voice quiet but direct. "Not really," I said. "Sometimes." She smiled, small, like it wasn't meant for me to notice. "That means yes." I wanted to say something back, something clever or safe, but the truth sat too close to my throat. Instead, I nodded, staring at the way steam curled from her coffee. It should have been an ordinary conversation, but it wasn't. Not the way her eyes lingered when I looked up, or the way her breath caught slightly before she spoke again. There was a rhythm between us that didn't belong to small talk. When she reached for her cup, her fingers brushed mine. It was nothing, accidental, probably. But my pulse jumped all the same. Her skin was warm, softer than I expected. She didn't pull away immediately, and that pause, just a second too long, was enough to make the air feel heavier. "You're shaking," she said quietly. "I'm not," I lied, smiling in a way that didn't reach my eyes. She didn't argue. Just looked at me like she could see every word I wasn't saying. The sound of rain outside grew louder, blurring the world beyond the glass. "You always come here alone?" I asked, just to break whatever silence was starting to pull us in too deep. "Usually," she said. "But I don't mind company." The way she said it wasn't an invitation. It was a confession. I noticed then, her wedding band was gone. Just a faint line of paler skin where it used to be. And suddenly, the air between us wasn't just charged, it was fragile. She caught me looking. Didn't hide it. Just exhaled slowly, her lips parting like she was about to say something, then closing again. There are moments that stretch, not because of time, but because they ask you to decide who you're going to be next. That was one of them. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Someone entered, a man's voice, familiar, calling her name. Lena turned toward it, but her eyes didn't leave mine right away. They stayed locked for a heartbeat too long, asking something I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Then she stood, smoothing her coat, her coffee untouched. "Don't disappear again," she said softly, not looking back as she walked away. And just like that, the room felt colder. But her eyes had already promised this wasn't over. I told myself I wouldn't go back to that cafe. But a week later, I was there again, pretending it was coincidence, pretending I hadn't replayed the way she said, "Don't disappear again," more times than I'd like to admit. Lena was already seated in the corner when I walked in, reading glasses perched low on her nose, the same small silver ring glinting as she turned a page. She looked up once, met my gaze, then returned to her book as if she'd been expecting me all along. "Twice in 1 week," she said when I sat down. "That's almost a habit." "Some habits aren't bad," I replied. She raised an eyebrow. "That depends on the habit." There was that tone again, half amused, half warning. It made me sit a little straighter, as if posture could disguise what was really happening inside me. The conversation was easy, too easy. I learned that her divorce had finalized 2 years ago. She mentioned it like she was describing weather, brief and personal, but her fingers tightened slightly around her mug as she spoke. I didn't ask questions. I didn't have to. And me? I told her about dropping out, about how everything I started seemed to fade before I finished it. She didn't look away, didn't fill the silence with comfort or advice. Just listened, the kind of listening that makes you realize how little people actually do it. You remind me of someone I used to know, she said softly. Good reminder or bad? Her lips curved faintly. That depends on what happens next. The way she said it, the pause, the low steadiness of her voice, it wasn't flirtation. It was something deeper, heavier. I could feel the air around us change again, that invisible pull neither of us wanted to name. At one point, she leaned closer, reaching past me for a napkin. Her shoulder brushed mine, light, deliberate. The faint scent of her perfume, cedar and rain, moved through me like memory. My pulse betrayed me, loud and obvious. She noticed. Of course she did. You're tense, she murmured. I'm fine. Liar. Her smile was small, but it stayed. She sat back, crossing her legs, her heel brushing the edge of my shoe under the table. We talked about nothing, books, weather, the city at night, but every word carried something else beneath it. Every pause felt like it could tip into something we both would regret and still choose anyway. When we finally stood to leave, I reached to take her empty cup, an instinct more than a gesture. Our fingers met. She didn't move. For a second, her thumb grazed the inside of my wrist, a soft, almost imperceptible touch, but it sent a quiet electricity through me that I knew she felt too. Either of us spoke. Outside, the rain had started again, fine and cold. She opened her umbrella and held it just enough to cover us both. Our shoulders brushed as we walked. And though either of us reached for the other, every step felt like a secret we were already keeping together. It started as a favor. At least that's what I told myself when Lena asked if I could help carry a few boxes from her classroom to her car after hours. The building was nearly empty, the echo of our footsteps the only sound in the long hallway. Outside, dusk was folding into night, and the rain hadn't quite stopped. The kind of quiet that made everything sharper, her perfume, the faint brush of her sleeve, the sound of her breathing when she bent to lift something heavier than she should. Careful, I said, catching the edge of the box before it slipped. Our hands met, flat against each other for half a second too long. She smiled, but it faltered. You shouldn't always be the one saving me. I don't mind. I know, she whispered. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for a moment the air thinned, like the world had stopped between heartbeats. Then the sharp sound of footsteps broke it. A colleague of hers, a woman I recognized, rounded the corner, holding papers. Lena? In that instant, we both stepped back. The distance between us felt sudden and unnatural, like pulling away from warmth into cold air. Oh, hey, just helping her with these, I said quickly, voice too light. Lena's smile was composed, effortless. He's a friend, just being kind. The other woman nodded politely, offered a distracted goodbye, and kept walking. The silence that followed was heavier than before. See? Lena said quietly. That's what I mean. What? She hesitated, then looked away. People notice. They always do. I wanted to say it didn't matter, that no one would care, but the way she said it, that soft ache under her voice, told me she'd already lived through being noticed in the wrong way before. We loaded the last box into her car. The rain had turned into mist, fine enough to catch the streetlight. I could see the small lines near her eyes when she smiled at something unspoken. You should go, she said softly. It's late. I nodded, but neither of us moved. The space between us felt like it was asking a question. My heart was too loud in my chest, and when she reached up, maybe to fix my collar, maybe just a touch, I didn't breathe. Her fingers brushed my jaw instead, slow, hesitant. Lena. She shook her head barely. Don't. But her thumb stayed there, tracing the edge of my skin. A phone buzzed in her bag, sharp, jarring. She flinched, pulled away fast. I caught a glimpse of the screen lighting up. Daniel, missed call. Her ex-husband, maybe? Or someone who still thought he could call. She silenced it, shoved the phone away. I should go. I nodded, but she didn't move right away. Her hand hovered near mine again, not touching, just close enough that I could feel the heat of her skin. Next time, I said quietly. She looked at me for a long moment, too long, then smiled, tired and real. There shouldn't be a next time. But neither of us believed her. When she finally drove away, I stood in the rain, watching the red glow of her taillights fade. And even then, I could still feel her touch, like it hadn't decided to leave yet. I didn't plan to see her again so soon. But plans never stood much chance with Lena. 3 nights after that rain-soaked parking lot, she texted. Just 4 words, "You left your notebook." She could have ignored it. She could have thrown it away. But she didn't. When I arrived, her apartment door was already open, a narrow gap of light spilling into the hallway. She stood by the window, hair loose, sweater draped carelessly over one shoulder. The city lights blurred behind her like a painting smudged by weather. "You didn't have to come all the way here," she said, turning toward me. "I wanted to." Her eyes softened, and then hardened again, like she was reminding herself not to believe me. The notebook sat on the table, untouched. I could have taken it and left. I should have. Instead, I stepped closer. "You always leave windows open?" I asked, just to say something. "Sometimes," she said. "It keeps the air moving." But the air wasn't moving. It was thick, warm from the radiator, dense with everything we weren't saying. I saw it then, a photograph on her shelf. Her and a man. Smiling. The ring was on her finger in that one. "Your husband?" I asked. "Ex," she said quietly. "He used to think I was someone else. Someone easier." She came closer, her voice softer now. "What about you? Still trying to be someone for someone?" "Maybe," I said. "But not tonight." The words hung there. And something in her expression shifted, the faintest tremor in the armor she wore. She reached out, a simple gesture, to hand me the notebook. But when I took it, our fingers stayed caught. Neither of us let go. "Lena, don't." Her voice was barely a breath. But she didn't step back. Her hand brushed my jaw, fingertips tracing the line of stubble she'd teased me about once. I could feel her pulse in that touch, fast, unsure. Her breath hitched when I leaned closer, close enough to feel it against my cheek. "This isn't," she started, but her voice broke before the sentence could. I wanted to tell her I knew. That I understood. That it wasn't supposed to happen, but it already had. "Then tell me to leave," I whispered. Her eyes flickered, confusion, defiance, something rawer beneath it. "You wouldn't listen. Try me." She exhaled, trembling, and in that single sound was every wall she tried to keep up, and every reason I couldn't walk away. Then she did something she hadn't before. She stepped in. Close enough that her chest brushed mine, her hand finding my shoulder like it needed something to hold on to. "I can't." She started again, but the rest dissolved when I brushed a strand of hair from her face. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat. And when she opened them again, we were inches apart. A breath. A silence. A choice about to happen. Then, a sharp knock on the door. Her whole body went still. We froze there, between what was right and what we wanted, the sound echoing through the apartment like a warning. The knock didn't stop. 3 short raps, a pause, then another. Lena stepped back, fast, breath sharp, pulse visible in her throat. I could still feel the heat of her against me, the ghost of a moment that hadn't finished. "Stay here," she whispered, voice barely steady. I moved behind the corner of the kitchen as she opened the door. A man stood there, mid-40s, rain on his coat, holding a single envelope. He looked at her the way someone looks at a memory that won't let go. "Daniel," she breathed. "I didn't come to fight," he said, glancing past her into the apartment. You left some things." I froze. So it was him. The name on her phone, the one that cut through the air like static that night in the parking lot. She took the envelope from him, fingers trembling. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." But you're still wearing my sweater, he said quietly. She looked down, startled, as if realizing it for the first time. Then she slipped it off her shoulders, the one I'd thought belonged entirely to her, and handed it back. When he finally left, she stood for a long time by the closed door. The apartment was too quiet, too full of the words either of us could say. You should go, she whispered without turning around. I stepped closer anyway. Was that my husband? She said. Ex-husband. For 2 years. Her voice cracked slightly on the second word. You still talk? Not really. He shows up when he shouldn't. Because of me? That made her turn. Don't flatter yourself. But the edge in her tone wasn't anger, it was fear, threaded through the exhaustion in her eyes. I'm not trying to. Yes, you are, she interrupted. You're trying to fix something you don't understand. I could feel something break in the space between us, a thin, invisible thread snapping. Then explain it, I said. She pressed her hands to her temples. You think this is simple? You're half my age. You still believe everything new can save you. But people like me, we already learned it doesn't. Her words landed heavy. But she didn't move away when I stepped forward. Then why did you call me? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, her hand brushed my chest as she passed, heading for the window. The contact was brief but enough to undo me completely. I didn't mean to, she said finally, her voice so small it almost vanished. I just wanted to feel like someone saw me again. Silence filled the room, thick, trembling. Then look, I said, stepping close behind her. I see you. She turned slowly, tears she wouldn't let fall glinting in the low light. Don't say that, she whispered. If you mean it, everything changes. I already did. Her breath caught, a soft, broken sound. She closed her eyes, leaning back against the window frame, her hand finding mine and gripping it like she wanted to let go but couldn't. Outside, the rain had started again. Inside, neither of us moved. Whatever we were running from, it had just caught up. For a while, neither of us spoke. The night had stretched into that uncertain hour between exhaustion and confession, where silence said too much and not enough. Lena stood by the window, her reflection ghosting in the glass. Outside, the rain blurred the city lights into something soft and trembling. I took a slow step toward her. She didn't turn, but her voice met me halfway. You should go, she said again. I could, I replied. But you don't want me to. Her shoulders rose and fell, one long, quiet breath. You think wanting something makes it right? No, I said. But pretending we don't want it doesn't make it go away. That made her turn. Her face was calm, but her eyes betrayed her, that flicker of conflict, the same one that kept drawing me closer no matter how many times she told me to stop. You don't understand what this costs, she said softly. I don't care what it costs. She laughed then, small, disbelieving. You will. I reached out, just enough for my fingers to find her wrist. Her pulse was wild beneath my touch. She didn't pull away. I've been trying not to see you, she whispered. But you keep showing up. Even when I closed my eyes. My thumb brushed the inside of her wrist, a barely there motion that made her inhale sharply. Tell me to stop, I said. She shook her head. I can't. The distance between us dissolved. Her breath met mine, warm and uneven. My hand moved up, to her shoulder, then the side of her neck. Her skin was cool, the kind of cool that only exists seconds before it warms under a touch. You'll hate me for this, she murmured. Not possible. She closed her eyes, leaning forward until her forehead rested against mine. The world felt small, almost still, the quiet hum of the city below, the faint scent of rain still clinging to her hair. I could feel every word she didn't say, the weight of years pressed between us, mistakes, fears, the ache of wanting something that shouldn't happen but already had. I don't want to lose myself again, she said, voice trembling. Then don't, I whispered. Find yourself here. Her hand came up, tentative, resting against my chest. For a moment, it was all heartbeat and breath, no words left to ruin it. She opened her eyes. Looked at me like she was memorizing something. Then, finally, she kissed me. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't cinematic. It was real, hesitant, desperate, the kind of kiss that asks forgiveness even as it takes everything it's not supposed to. When she pulled back, her voice was barely audible. "Now you know," she said. "I do." And for the first time, there was no fear in her eyes, only the quiet certainty of two people who had finally stopped running from what they already were. Morning crept in quietly, brushing through the curtains like it didn't want to intrude. The city outside was still half asleep. A few cars, a few birds, the slow hum of life beginning again. Lena sat on the couch, hair still tousled from the night, a blanket wrapped loosely around her shoulders. The steam from her coffee curled into the pale light, the scent of it mixing with the faint trace of rain still hanging in the air. I stood by the window, unsure what to do with my hands, with myself. The air between us felt different now, softer, less charged, but heavier with everything that had been said without words. She looked up when she noticed I hadn't moved. "You're quiet," she said, voice low but steady. "I don't want to say the wrong thing," I admitted. Her lips curved barely. "Then don't say anything at all." She patted the space beside her. I crossed the room, sat down. The cushion dipped under our shared weight, and the warmth of her shoulder against mine felt like the most natural thing in the world, and the most impossible. "I kept thinking," she said after a while, "that maybe this would fade. That you'd wake up one day and realize I'm not the version of me you've built in your head." "I never built you," I said. "I just noticed you." She smiled, small, honest, the kind that comes after too many almosts and not enough truths. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," I said. "But it's real." That word hung there. Real. It didn't need decoration. She reached for my hand then, slow and deliberate, fingers threading through mine like she was testing whether it would still feel right in daylight. Her thumb traced the back of my knuckles, a quiet, tender rhythm that said everything words couldn't. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid people would look at us and only see wrongness. That you'd see my age before you saw me." "I saw both," I said. "And I stayed." Her eyes softened, the last of her defenses falling away. She leaned in until her head rested on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle. It wasn't heavy this time. It felt earned. We didn't talk about the future, or what anyone would think. We didn't need to. For once, the moment was enough, the closeness, the quiet understanding that nothing about us had been easy, but all of it had been honest. Lena lifted her head after a long while, her fingers still tangled with mine. "So what now?" she asked softly. I smiled, turning toward her. "Now we stop pretending." She laughed, that low, beautiful laugh I'd never get used to, and pressed her forehead to mine. "Then don't," she whispered. And just like that, the space between us disappeared again, not rushed, not uncertain this time, but steady, warm, inevitable. Outside, the morning light touched the edges of everything, her hair, her face, our hands still clasped together. Whatever came next didn't matter. We'd already chosen,